In the year 2157, when the last natural forests had been replaced by biosynthetic groves and children learned about Earth's original ecosystems through neural implants rather than direct observation, a small girl named Kara made what would later be called the most significant mistake in human evolutionary history. The residential Pod 7 Alpha housed 347 families in the New Geneva habitat, a sprawling vertical city that stretched from the contaminated surface to the upper atmosphere. Each family unit was allocated precisely 847 cubic meters of living space, calculated to optimize psychological well-being while maintaining population density requirements. Kara's family occupied Unit 2847C, a mid-level arrangement with one window panel that displayed rotating images of what Earth had looked like before the Great Transformation. Kara was 7 years old by chronological measure, though her biological development had been accelerated through standard enhancement protocols to match the cognitive capacity of what had once been a 12-year-old child. Like all children of her generation, she possessed neural interfaces that connected her directly to the global knowledge matrix, allowing instant access to humanity's accumulated wisdom. Yet despite this technological marvel, or perhaps because of it, she retained the fundamental curiosity that had driven human progress for millennia. The morning of the incident began like any other in the regulated environment of Pod 7 Alpha. The artificial sun panels gradually increased their luminosity to simulate dawn, temperature controls adjusted from night settings to day parameters, and the air circulation systems introduced subtle scents designed to promote alertness and positive mood states. Kara's parents, Dr. Elena Vesquez and engineer Marcus Chan, prepared for their respective duties maintaining the habitat's biological systems and structural integrity. "Remember, Kara," Elena said as she gathered her research materials, "today you'll be studying botanical evolution with Professor Hendrick's learning program. Pay attention to the sections about seed development and plant life cycles." Kara nodded enthusiastically, her enhanced neural pathways already anticipating the knowledge transfer. The educational protocols of their era were efficient beyond the dreams of previous generations. Entire disciplines could be absorbed in hours rather than years. Yet something in Kara resisted the passive absorption of pre-processed information. She possessed an unusual trait for her generation, the desire to discover rather than simply download. After her parents departed for their work cycles, Kara accessed the educational program as instructed. The neural interface flooded her consciousness with detailed information about plant biology, evolutionary adaptations, and the complex relationships between organisms and their environments. She learned about photosynthesis, cellular structures, genetic variation, and reproductive strategies. The knowledge settled into her enhanced memory systems with perfect clarity and organization. But, as the lesson progressed, something unexpected occurred. While reviewing archived footage of Earth's original forests, Kara noticed something that the educational algorithms had overlooked or deemed irrelevant. In one ancient video segment, she observed a human child, a girl roughly her age from centuries past, carefully placing a small object in soil and tending to it with obvious care and attention. The child in the recording watered the spot daily, spoke to it gently, and watched expectantly for signs of growth. The image resonated with something deep within Kara's consciousness, something that transcended the efficient neural pathways and enhanced cognitive functions. She felt an inexplicable urge to replicate this ancient behavior, to engage in the same mysterious ritual of nurturing and expectation. The opportunity presented itself during her afternoon recreation period. Like all residential pods, 7 Alpha maintained a small biogarden where food production supplements were cultivated. The space served both practical and psychological purposes, providing fresh nutrients while offering residents a connection to humanity's agricultural heritage. Most pod dwellers visited the biogarden occasionally, appreciating its aesthetic qualities without truly engaging with the growing process. Kara had always been drawn to the biogarden, though she couldn't articulate why. The sight of green plants reaching toward artificial light sources stirred something in her that the neural interface couldn't explain or categorize. She would often sit among the hydroponic arrays and soil cultivation beds, watching the slow dance of growth that seemed to operate by rules entirely different from the digital precision that governed every other aspect of her existence. On this particular afternoon, while sitting beside a section devoted to heritage tomato cultivation, Kara noticed a small, smooth object half buried in the soil at the edge of the growing bed. She pulled it free and examined it carefully. It was roughly oval in shape, about the size of her thumb, with a mottled brown surface that felt warm and substantial in her palm. To her 7-year-old perception, enhanced though it was, the object bore a striking resemblance to the seed illustrations she had studied that morning. The rational part of her consciousness, the part enhanced by technology and optimized for logical processing, recognized that the object was almost certainly a small stone, probably displaced from the growing medium's mineral supplements. Her neural interface could have provided instant spectral analysis and material composition with minimal effort. She could have accessed the global knowledge matrix and compared the object to millions of cataloged specimens. Instead, she chose to believe. The choice was not made from ignorance or lack of access to information. Rather, it emerged from a deeper human impulse that no amount of technological enhancement had managed to suppress or replace. Kara wanted to participate in the ancient mystery of growth and development. She wanted to nurture something from beginning to end, to witness the transformation from potential to actuality. The stone in her hand became, through an act of pure intention, a seed full of unknown possibilities. She found an unused section of the biogarden where the soil lay fallow, awaiting the next planting cycle. Carefully, reverently, she dug a small depression with her fingers and placed the stone seed into the earth. She covered it gently, leaving just enough soil to provide what she imagined would be proper protection while still allowing room for eventual sprouting. From the garden's maintenance supplies, she retrieved a small watering device and moistened the soil around her planted treasure. The water soaked into the earth with a soft, satisfying sound that seemed to promise hidden processes and secret transformations. Kara found herself speaking to the buried stone, sharing her hopes for what it might become. "Grow strong," she whispered, her voice carrying the same tone of gentle encouragement she had observed in the ancient recording. "I'll take care of you every day until you're ready to show yourself to the world." As the days passed, Kara developed a routine around her stone garden. Each morning before her educational sessions and each afternoon during recreation time, she would visit the spot where her seed lay buried. She would check the soil moisture, add water when needed, and spend long minutes studying the surface for any signs of emerging growth. Her parents, when they noticed her new interest in gardening, approved heartily. Elena was particularly pleased to see her daughter engaging with biological systems in a hands-on manner. "It's wonderful that you're taking such an interest in cultivation," she told Kara during one of their evening meal periods. "Direct interaction with growing systems will enhance your understanding of the biological principles we're studying." Marcus, while less knowledgeable about botanical matters, appreciated the patience and dedication Kara was demonstrating. "Persistence and careful attention to detail are valuable traits," he observed. "Whatever you're growing there, you're learning important lessons about responsibility and long-term commitment." Neither parent thought to examine exactly what their daughter was so carefully tending. In their world of monitored efficiency and controlled outcomes, the idea that a child might choose to nurture something without certain knowledge of its nature seemed unlikely to the point of impossibility. They assumed, quite reasonably, that Kara was working with approved seeds from the biogarden's educational reserves. Kara herself remained committed to her belief despite the absence of any visible progress. Weeks passed without any sign of sprouting, but, rather than abandoning her project or questioning her initial assessment, she convinced herself that she was tending to a particularly slow-developing variety of plant. She researched growth cycles and the global knowledge matrix, focusing on species known for extended germination periods. Desert cacti, ancient trees, and rare flowering plants that might remain dormant for months or even years before showing signs of life. The more she researched, the more convinced she became that her patience would eventually be rewarded. She developed elaborate theories about the optimal growing conditions for her mysterious seed, adjusting her watering schedule, modifying the soil composition with various nutrients from the biogarden supplies, and even talking to the planted area to provide what she had read might be beneficial acoustic stimulation. Other children in the residential pod began to notice Kira's unusual dedication to her small patch of garden. Most found her behavior puzzling. In their world of instant gratification and immediate results, the idea of waiting months for uncertain outcomes seemed almost incomprehensible. A few showed mild interest, asking what she was growing and when it might appear above ground. "It's a very special kind of seed," Kara would explain with the earnest conviction that only children can manage. "It takes a long time to grow because it's going to be something really amazing when it's ready. I can feel that it's alive down there, getting stronger every day. The other children would nod politely and return to their more predictable activities: virtual reality games with guaranteed outcomes, educational programs with measurable progress indicators, and social interactions facilitated by behavioral optimization algorithms. Kira's patient cultivation of uncertainty seemed like an anachronism from humanity's less efficient past. But Kira persisted, driven by something that transcended rational analysis or social conformity. Each day brought new observations and fresh hope. She noticed variations in soil color that she interpreted as signs of underground activity. She detected subtle changes in texture that suggested root development. She convinced herself that the earth around her planted stone felt warmer than the surrounding soil, indicating metabolic processes taking place beneath the surface. Dr. Sarah Chen-Okafor, the residential pod's psychological wellness coordinator, eventually took notice of Kara's behavior during one of her routine observation rounds. Sarah's role involved monitoring the mental health and social development of the pod's children, identifying potential adjustment issues before they could impact overall habitat efficiency. The Vasquezchian child has been displaying some unusual behavioral patterns, Sarah reported to Elena and Marcus during a scheduled parent consultation. She's been spending excessive amounts of time in the biogarden, apparently tending to some sort of long-term cultivation project. While the activity itself isn't problematic, the intensity of her focus and her apparent emotional investment in uncertain outcomes suggests potential issues with reality processing. Elena and Marcus exchanged glances of concern. In their highly regulated society, deviation from normal behavioral patterns could indicate serious underlying problems requiring intervention. What exactly has she been doing? Elena asked, her voice carrying the careful neutrality that parents learned when discussing their children with official monitors. She appears to have planted something several weeks ago and has been maintaining extremely consistent care routines despite the absence of any visible results, Sarah explained, consulting her observational data. When questioned about her project, she speaks with unusual conviction about eventual success, but she can't provide specific details about what she's growing or when results might be expected. The behavior pattern suggests potential dissociation from normal cause and effect relationships. Marcus frowned thoughtfully. Could this be related to some educational program she's been accessing? Perhaps she's working on a long-term project that we're not aware of? Sarah shook her head. I've reviewed her educational access logs. There are no current assignments or approved activities that would involve extended cultivation periods without scheduled progress markers. This appears to be entirely self-initiated behavior. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, exploring various possibilities and potential interventions. Eventually, Elena and Marcus agreed to monitor Kara's behavior more closely and to gently investigate the nature of her gardening project. If her reality processing continued to show signs of significant deviation from normal parameters, more formal intervention might be necessary. That evening, during the family's communal meal period, Elena approached the subject with careful indirection. Kira, we've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time in the biogarden lately. We're very pleased that you're taking such an interest in cultivation. Can you tell us more about what you're working on? Kara's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. I planted a very special seed, and I've been taking care of it every day. It's going to be something wonderful when it finally grows, but it needs lots of patience because it's the kind that takes a very long time. What kind of seed is it? Marcus asked gently. Where did you get it? For the first time, Kira hesitated. She realized that she couldn't provide the kind of specific, documentable answer that adults expected. She couldn't cite a source or reference educational materials that had guided her choice. The truth that she had found the stone and chosen to believe it was a seed seemed suddenly fragile when exposed to direct questioning. It's a seed I found, she said finally, her voice carrying less certainty than before. I know it's going to grow because I can feel it. When I put my hands on the soil above it, it feels alive and warm. Elena and Marcus exchanged a quick glance of concern. The inability to provide factual information combined with claims of subjective sensing suggested exactly the kind of reality processing issues that Dr. Chen-Okafor had identified. Sweetheart, Elena said carefully, would you like us to come look at your garden tomorrow?
Maybe we can help you understand what you're growing and what to expect. Kira nodded eagerly, missing the subtle tension in her parents' voices.
The prospect of sharing her project with them filled her with excitement rather than apprehension. She spent the rest of the evening describing her daily care routines and the various signs of progress she had observed. The next afternoon, Elena and Marcus accompanied their daughter to the biogarden for what they privately considered a diagnostic observation session.
Kira led them to her carefully tended patch of soil with obvious pride and anticipation.
"This is where I planted it," she explained, kneeling beside the area and gesturing toward the soil with reverent care. "I water it every morning and every afternoon, and I talk to it sometimes because I read that plants like to hear voices. Look how rich and dark the soil is here. That's because the roots are getting stronger underneath."
Elena knelt beside her daughter and examined the area carefully. The soil did indeed appear well maintained and properly hydrated.
There were no obvious signs of plant growth, but there were also no indications of neglect or improper care.
Whatever Kira had planted, she had been tending it with admirable consistency and attention to detail. "Kira," Elena said gently, "can you show us exactly where you put the seed? We'd like to check if it might be ready to transplant to a better location."
Without hesitation, Kira pointed to a spot near the center of her cultivated area. "Right there, about this deep," she said, indicating a depth of roughly 3 inches with her fingers. Marcus retrieved a small gardening tool from the biogarden's maintenance supplies. "Let's take a very careful look," he said, beginning to excavate with precision that would disturb the surrounding soil as little as possible. Within moments, the tool encountered the object that Kira had so faithfully tended. Marcus carefully extracted it from the earth and held it up for examination. In the afternoon's artificial light, there was no mistaking what lay in his palm: a simple stone, smooth and unremarkable, exactly as it had been when Kira first placed it in the ground. The silence that followed was profound and complex.
Kira stared at the stone in her father's hand with an expression of confusion that quickly transformed into something approaching devastation.
Elena watched her daughter's face with growing concern, while Marcus struggled to find words that might soften the impact of this discovery. "But I took such good care of it," Kira whispered, reaching out to touch the stone with trembling fingers. "I watered it every day, and I talked to it, and I felt it growing. I was so sure." Elena gathered her daughter into her arms, feeling the small body shake with the first true disappointment of her young life. In their world of controlled outcomes and guaranteed results, children rarely experience the raw pain of failed hopes and misplaced faith. "Oh, sweetheart," Elena murmured, "you did take wonderful care of it. You showed more patience and dedication than most adults could manage. It's not your fault that it wasn't what you thought it was." But, as she spoke these comforting words, Elena felt something shift in her understanding of what had just occurred. Her daughter had spent weeks nurturing a stone with the same care and attention that humanity's greatest gardeners had devoted to their finest specimens. She had demonstrated patience, consistency, hope, and unwavering faith in the face of absence evidence. These were not the behaviors of a child with reality processing problems, they were the behaviors of someone willing to believe in possibilities beyond immediate proof. Marcus seemed to reach a similar realization as he studied the stone in his hand and observed his daughter's heartbreak. "Kira," he said slowly, "what you did here, it was remarkable. You showed that you could commit to caring for something even when you couldn't see immediate results. That's one of the most important abilities any person can develop." Kira looked up at him through tears, her enhanced cognitive abilities struggling to process this unexpected interpretation of her failure. "But it didn't grow. I was wrong about everything." "Were you wrong about taking care of things that matter to you?" Marcus asked gently. "Were you wrong about being patient and persistent? Were you wrong about believing that nurturing and attention can help things develop?" As these questions settled into Kira's consciousness, something began to shift in her understanding of what had occurred over the past weeks. The stone itself might not have grown, but something else had been developing during her faithful tending. Her capacity for sustained commitment, her willingness to invest in uncertain outcomes, her ability to maintain hope in the absence of evidence, these qualities had been growing stronger with each day of patient cultivation. Elena watched her daughter's expression change as these realizations took hold. "Kira,
I think you may have been growing something after all. Just not what you expected. That evening, the family held what would later be remembered as one of the most important conversations in their shared history. They discussed the nature of growth, the relationship between intention and outcome, and the value of commitment that transcends immediate gratification. Kira's stone tending had revealed something crucial about human nature that their optimized society had inadvertently begun to suppress. Word of Kira's stone garden spread throughout Pod 7 Alpha with surprising speed and generated unexpected responses. Rather than viewing her behavior as problematic or indicative of adjustment issues, many adults found themselves strangely moved by her demonstration of pure faith and commitment. In a world where outcomes could be calculated and guaranteed, her willingness to nurture uncertainty seemed like a message from humanity's deeper past. Dr. Chinokafor, who had initially flagged Kira's behavior as potentially problematic, found herself reconsidering her assessment. During her next report to the pod's administration, she described Kira's stone tending not as evidence of reality processing dysfunction, but as an expression of profoundly human qualities that their society might benefit from cultivating rather than suppressing. The child demonstrated sustained commitment, emotional investment in long-term outcomes, and faith in processes beyond her immediate control, Sarah wrote in her revised evaluation. These behaviors, while uncommon in our current social environment, represent core human capacities that may have significant value for individual development and community resilience. The response to this report was unexpected. Rather than dismissing Kira's behavior as an isolated anomaly, the pod's governing council began to examine whether their society's emphasis on predictable outcomes and guaranteed results might be inadvertently suppressing important aspects of human nature. Children throughout Pod 7 Alpha began experimenting with their own versions of Kira's stone garden. Some consciously planted stones while others selected objects of uncertain potential, broken pieces of technology, discarded materials from manufacturing processes, or fragments of art projects that others had abandoned. The common element was the decision to nurture something without certainty about what it might become. To everyone's surprise, including the children themselves, these experiments in faithful tending began producing unexpected results. Not plant growth or magical transformations, but development of patience, persistence, creativity, and emotional resilience. Children who had previously shown signs of anxiety in the face of uncertain outcomes became more comfortable with ambiguity. Those who had struggled with long-term commitment discovered new capacity for sustained effort. Most significantly, the children began demonstrating increased innovation and creative problem-solving abilities. The willingness to invest in uncertain outcomes, it appeared, was closely connected to the capacity to envision possibilities beyond current realities. Elena, watching these developments with professional interest, began to understand that her daughter's stone tending had revealed something crucial about human cognitive development. The enhanced neural interfaces and optimized educational systems that defined their society produced remarkable efficiency in known learning domains, but they might be inadvertently constraining the imaginative and faith-based thinking that drove true innovation. She began documenting the behavioral changes occurring throughout Pod 7 Alpha, focusing particularly on the relationship between tolerance for uncertainty and creative capacity. Her preliminary findings suggested that Kira's seemingly naive mistake had actually identified a critical gap in their society's approach to human development. Marcus, approaching the phenomenon from his engineering perspective, became interested in the parallels between Kira's stone tending and the iterative design processes that had produced humanity's greatest technological advances. Every major breakthrough had required someone to persist in developing ideas that couldn't be proven successful in advance. The willingness to nurture uncertain possibilities was, he realized, one of the fundamental drivers of progress. As the first part of their story drew to a close, the Vasquestian family found themselves at the center of a quiet revolution in thinking about human nature and social organization. Kira's simple act of watering a stone, believing it to be a seed, had revealed the profound importance of maintaining faith in possibilities beyond immediate evidence. But this was only the beginning of their journey. The stone that had failed to grow as a plant was about to generate growth of an entirely different and far more significant nature. Part 2, The Cultivation of Strength. 6 months after Kara's discovery of the stone she had mistaken for a seed, Pod 7 Alpha had become the subject of intense study by sociologists, psychologists, and education specialists from across the New Geneva habitat system.
What had begun as a child's innocent error had evolved into a phenomenon that challenged fundamental assumptions about human development and social organization. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself transformed from a routine biological systems researcher into the lead investigator of what administrators had begun calling the Stone Garden effect. Her daughter's simple act of faith had generated data patterns that contradicted decades of established theory about optimal child development protocols. The evidence was undeniable. Children who had participated in various forms of uncertainty cultivation, tending to objects or projects without guaranteed outcomes, showed measurable improvements in cognitive flexibility, emotional resilience, creative problem solving, and long-term commitment capabilities. More significantly, these improvements appeared to be permanent rather than temporary, suggesting that the experience of nurturing uncertainty created lasting changes in neural development.
The implications are profound, Elena explained during a presentation to the new Geneva Scientific Council.
We've been optimizing our educational systems for efficiency and predictable outcomes, but we may have inadvertently been constraining the very cognitive capacities that drive genuine innovation and adaptive thinking. The council chamber, a circular amphitheater designed to optimize group decision-making through careful acoustic and spatial arrangement, buzzed with subdued conversation as the assembled experts processed these findings. Dr. Michael Harrison, the Habitat's chief education coordinator, leaned forward with obvious concern.
Dr. Vasquez, are you suggesting that our current educational protocols are fundamentally flawed? We've achieved unprecedented learning efficiency and knowledge transfer rates. Children today master in months what previous generations required years to learn. Elena nodded thoughtfully.
Our systems excel at transferring established knowledge and developing proficiency in known domains.
But knowledge transfer isn't the same as knowledge creation.
Innovation requires the ability to persist in exploring possibilities that can't be proven valuable in advance. Our optimization for certainty may be inadvertently suppressing the exploratory thinking that generates new ideas. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the Habitat's leading child psychologist, raised her hand to speak. What concerns me is the potential for encouraging delusional thinking.
If we validate children's beliefs in impossible outcomes, aren't we undermining their ability to distinguish between reality and fantasy?
That's exactly what we thought initially, Elena replied. But our data suggests the opposite.
Children who engaged in uncertainty cultivation actually showed improved reality testing in other domains.
They became better at distinguishing between what they could control and what they couldn't, more accurate in assessing probable outcomes, and more resilient when faced with genuine setbacks. She activated the chamber's display system to show comparative behavioral analyses. Children who never experience the disappointment of failed expectations often develop unrealistic assumptions about their ability to control outcomes. Kira and the other Stone Gardeners learned to maintain hope and commitment while simultaneously accepting that their efforts might not produce the results they desired. Marcus Chen, attending as both Kara's father and a representative of the Habitat's engineering division, stood to address the assembly.
From a design perspective, what we're seeing parallels the difference between optimization and innovation.
Optimization improves existing systems toward known goals. Innovation requires the willingness to explore unknown territories where failure is not only possible but probable.
He gestured toward a holographic display showing the Habitat's complex infrastructure.
Every critical system in our environment emerged from someone's willingness to pursue ideas that couldn't be proven successful in advance. If we eliminate uncertainty tolerance from human development, we may be creating a generation capable of maintaining our current technology but incapable of transcending it. The debate continued for several hours, touching on fundamental questions about the purpose of education, the nature of human potential, and the role of uncertainty in psychological development. Eventually, the council reached a consensus to expand research into the Stone Garden effect while simultaneously piloting experimental educational programs that incorporated structured uncertainty experiences. Meanwhile, Kira herself was undergoing transformations that extended far beyond the measured improvements documented in official studies. The experience of tending her stone seed had awakened something in her that seemed to operate by rules entirely different from the enhanced cognitive systems that defined her generation. She began to notice details about the world around her that her neural interfaces couldn't categorize or explain. The way light moved through the artificial atmospheric processors suggested patterns that had no basis in her programmed knowledge base. The subtle variations in how people moved through their daily routines seemed to contain information about their inner states that wasn't captured in official behavioral monitoring systems. Most significantly, she developed what she privately called growing sense, an intuitive understanding of potential and development that transcended rational analysis. She could observe a situation or person and somehow perceive possibilities that weren't immediately evident to others. This ability first manifested during an interaction with another child in her educational cohort. Thomas Nakamura had been struggling with his assigned learning modules, showing signs of stress and diminished performance that had attracted official concern from educational monitors. Most adults and children had begun avoiding him, uncomfortable with his deviation from normal success patterns. Kira, however, sensed something different when she observed Thomas. Beneath his academic difficulties, she perceived a kind of potential energy, like water building pressure behind a dam. Rather than seeing failure, she recognized someone whose natural learning style was incompatible with standard educational delivery methods. "Thomas," she said during one of their recreation periods, "would you like to try a stone garden?" He looked at her with confusion. "You mean plant a rock and pretend it's going to grow?" "Everyone knows that was just. I mean, everyone understands what really happened." Kira smiled with the patient wisdom of someone who had learned to see beyond immediate appearances. "The stone doesn't grow. But something else does. Something important." Over the following weeks, Kira guided Thomas through the process of selecting an object for patient cultivation. He chose a fragment of broken circuitry from the habitat's maintenance systems, attracted to its complex geometric patterns and mysterious original purpose. As Thomas began his daily routine of tending to the circuit fragment, cleaning it, studying it, imagining what it might become if somehow restored to function, Kira observed the changes that she had somehow anticipated. His stress levels decreased as he developed patience with gradual processes. His academic performance improved as he learned to persist through difficulties without immediate gratification. Most importantly, his confidence grew as he discovered his capacity for sustained commitment. "How did you know?" Thomas asked her one afternoon as they sat together in the bio garden, both tending their respective projects. His fragment of circuitry had become the center of an elaborate arrangement of stones and plant materials that he had been gradually assembling over months. Kira considered the question carefully. How could she explain that she had perceived his potential for growth before he had demonstrated it? How could she describe the intuitive understanding that seemed to emerge from her experience with the stone seed? "When I was taking care of my stone," she said finally, "I learned to see growing that wasn't visible yet. Not just in plants, but in everything. People have seeds inside them too, but they need the right kind of care to develop." Thomas nodded slowly, his enhanced cognitive systems struggling to process this metaphorical framework that nonetheless seemed to contain important truth. "So when you look at people, you can see what they might become?" "Sometimes. When they're ready for growing but don't know how to start." This conversation, recorded by habitat monitoring systems and later analyzed by researchers, would become one of the key documents in understanding how the stone garden effect propagated beyond its original subjects. Kira had developed not just tolerance for uncertainty, but an active ability to perceive and nurture potential in others. Dr. Elena Vasquez, reviewing the interaction data, felt a mixture of professional fascination and parental concern. Her daughter was demonstrating capacities that exceeded anything predicted by developmental models, but these abilities also set her apart from her peers in ways that could prove socially challenging. Elena scheduled a private consultation with Dr. Chinokafor to discuss Kira's unusual development. They met in Sarah's office, a space designed to promote calm reflection and honest communication. "Sarah, I need to understand what's happening to Kira. The behavioral changes we've documented in all the Stone Garden children are significant, but what I'm observing in my daughter goes beyond anything we've measured in the other subjects." Dr. Chinokafor nodded thoughtfully. She had been monitoring Kira's development closely and had noticed the same patterns that concerned Elena. Kira appears to be developing what we might call enhanced social perception. She's becoming remarkably skilled at identifying potential in others and understanding what kinds of experiences might help that potential develop.
Is that normal? Safe? I don't want her to become isolated because she thinks differently from everyone else. That's a valid concern, Sarah admitted. But consider the alternative. If Kara can actually perceive and nurture human potential in ways that others can't, suppressing that ability might be far more harmful than allowing it to develop naturally. They discussed various approaches to supporting Kara's unusual development while ensuring her continued social integration. Eventually, they agreed on a strategy that would allow her to explore her emerging abilities while providing guidance and safeguards. The opportunity to implement this strategy came sooner than expected. Dr. Harrison approached Elena with a proposal that would have seemed impossible months earlier. Elena, we'd like Kara to participate in a special project. We're developing new educational protocols based on the Stone Garden research, and we think she might be able to help us understand how to implement uncertainty cultivation more effectively. Elena felt a surge of protective concern. Michael, she's still just a child. I don't want her turned into some kind of experimental subject. Not an experimental subject, Harrison clarified. A collaborator. We're finding that the children who experienced Stone Gardens naturally understand principles that we adults can barely articulate. Kara seems particularly gifted at recognizing how to help others through their own uncertainty cultivation experiences. After extensive discussion with Marcus and careful consideration of potential risks and benefits, Elena agreed to let Kara participate in the educational development project. The decision would prove to be one of the most significant choices in their family's history. Kara's role in the project began simply. Researchers would observe her interactions with children who were beginning their own uncertainty cultivation experiences, documenting the guidance techniques she used and analyzing the effectiveness of her approaches. What they discovered challenged fundamental assumptions about learning and teaching. Kara didn't provide information or instructions in the conventional sense. Instead, she seemed to perceive what each individual child needed to discover for themselves and created conditions that would facilitate those discoveries. With some children, she recommended specific objects for cultivation: fragments of art, broken tools, incomplete puzzles, or natural specimens of uncertain origin. With others, she suggested particular locations for their projects or specific care routines that matched their psychological needs. Most remarkably, she demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict which children were ready for uncertainty cultivation and which needed different kinds of support. Her recommendations proved consistently accurate, leading to successful experiences for participants while avoiding the frustration and disappointment that characterized failed attempts. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the project's lead researcher, documented Kara's methods with growing amazement. She's not teaching in any conventional sense, Jennifer reported to the research team. She's perceiving individual readiness and potential, then creating conditions that allow natural development to occur. As word of Kara's abilities spread through the scientific community, requests began arriving for her to work with children from other residential pods and even other habitat systems. Elena found herself facing difficult decisions about how much exposure and responsibility was appropriate for her daughter. The answer came from an unexpected source, Kara herself. During one of their evening conversations, she expressed her own thoughts about her developing role. "Mom, when I look at other children now, sometimes I can see the seeds they have inside them. Seeds for becoming braver, or more patient, or better at solving problems. But most of them don't know how to water their seeds, so they stay buried." Elena studied her daughter's earnest expression, struck by the profound simplicity of her metaphorical framework. "And you want to help them learn how to water their seeds?" "Yes. Because everyone has them. Even grown-ups. But people forget how to see them, or they get scared that watering might not work." The conversation continued for over an hour, with Kara describing her perceptions of human potential and her understanding of how patient cultivation could help people discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. By the end of their discussion, Elena realized that her daughter had developed not just unusual abilities, but a genuine calling to help others grow in ways that transcended conventional educational approaches. The formal expansion of Kara's role came through a proposal from the New Geneva Scientific Council. They wanted to establish the first development catalyst program,
with Kira serving as the prototype for a new kind of educational specialist focused on nurturing human potential rather than transferring information. The program would allow Kira to work with carefully selected groups of children and adults, helping them discover and develop capabilities through structured uncertainty experiences. The results would be documented to create new training protocols for other potential development catalysts. Marcus, reviewing the proposal from his engineering perspective, saw parallels to the most successful innovation processes he had encountered. The best design teams include someone who can see possibilities that others miss and help team members discover capabilities they didn't know they had.
Kira might be developing the human equivalent of that role.
Elena, despite her continued concerns about placing such responsibility on a young child, recognized that Kira's abilities represented something genuinely new in human development. Suppressing or constraining those abilities might prevent not just her daughter's growth, but potentially transformative advances in their understanding of human potential. The family agreed to participate in the Development Catalyst program, with carefully established boundaries and safeguards to protect Kira's own development while allowing her to explore her emerging calling. As the second part of their story drew to a close, Kira had transformed from a child who watered a stone into someone capable of perceiving and nurturing the hidden seeds of potential in others. Her innocent mistake had evolved into a revolutionary approach to human development that challenged everything their society thought it understood about teaching, learning, and growth. But the full implications of her discovery were yet to be revealed. The stone that had failed to sprout was about to generate possibilities that would reshape not just individual lives, but the fundamental structure of human civilization. Part 3, The Harvest of Transformation. 2 years after Kira first planted a stone believing it to be a seed, the New Geneva habitat system had become the focal point of what historians would later call the Great Developmental Revolution. The simple act of a child's faith had catalyzed changes that rippled through every aspect of human society, from education and psychology to governance and technological innovation. Kira, now 9 years old chronologically but possessing the developmental complexity of someone far older, had become the first certified development catalyst in human history. Her ability to perceive and nurture potential in others had been studied, documented, and gradually understood well enough to create training protocols for others who showed similar aptitudes. The Development Catalyst program had expanded beyond its experimental origins to become a core component of educational systems throughout the habitat network. Traditional knowledge transfer methods remained important for established information, but they were now supplemented by uncertainty cultivation experiences designed to develop creativity, resilience, and innovative thinking. Dr. Elena Vesquez had been appointed Director of Developmental Research for the entire habitat system, leading teams that studied the psychological and neurological foundations of the stone garden effect. Her work had revealed that the human capacity for uncertainty tolerance was far more plastic and developmentally crucial than anyone had previously understood. We've discovered that the willingness to nurture uncertain possibilities is connected to neural plasticity in ways we never imagined, Elena explained during a presentation to the Global Scientific Assembly. Children who engage in sustained uncertainty cultivation show enhanced connectivity between brain regions associated with creativity, persistence, and emotional regulation. The presentation took place in the Grand Assembly Chamber, a magnificent space that could accommodate representatives from all 47 habitat systems in the solar network. The chamber's design incorporated elements that promoted both focused attention and creative thinking, flowing curves that guided the eye, acoustic properties that enhanced communication, and lighting systems that subtly shifted to support different types of cognitive activity.
But the changes aren't limited to childhood development, Elena continued.
Adults who engage in uncertainty cultivation experiences show measurable improvements in innovative thinking and adaptive problem solving. The human brain, it appears, is designed to benefit from faith-based nurturing throughout the lifespan.
Dr.
Harrison, now promoted to Chief Innovation Coordinator for the Habitat System, presented data on the practical applications of these discoveries. Educational efficiency had actually increased rather than decreased when uncertainty cultivation was incorporated into learning protocols. Students who learned to persist through ambiguous projects showed improved performance in conventional subjects as well. More significantly, innovation rates had increased dramatically throughout the habitat system.
New technologies, artistic achievements, and social solutions were emerging at unprecedented rates as more people developed comfort with uncertainty and willingness to pursue possibilities beyond proven approaches. Marcus Chen, speaking as Director of Adaptive Engineering, described how uncertainty cultivation principles had revolutionized technical development processes. Traditional engineering emphasizes minimizing risk and optimizing known solutions. But breakthrough innovations require someone willing to explore possibilities that can't be proven successful in advance. He activated displays showing schematic diagrams of new technologies that had emerged from uncertainty cultivation-enhanced design teams. Atmospheric processors with unprecedented efficiency, energy systems that incorporated principles discovered through patient experimentation, and communication networks that adapted dynamically to user needs. The key insight is that technical innovation requires the same kind of patient faith that Kira demonstrated when she tended her stone. The willingness to nurture possibilities without immediate evidence of success. But the most profound changes had occurred in the social and psychological fabric of their civilization. Children who had grown up with uncertainty cultivation experiences showed remarkable emotional resilience and interpersonal skills. They were better able to support others through difficulties, more comfortable with diversity and difference, and more skilled at recognizing and developing potential in their communities. Dr. Chen Okafor, now leading the Department of Social Development, had documented these changes in comprehensive longitudinal studies. Stone Garden children demonstrate enhanced empathy, improved conflict resolution abilities, and greater tolerance for individual differences. They seem to understand instinctively that people develop at different rates and in different ways. These social improvements had cascading effects throughout the habitat systems. Crime rates had decreased as people became more skilled at identifying and addressing underlying problems before they escalated into destructive behaviors. Community cooperation had increased as more individuals developed the ability to perceive and nurture collective potential. Most remarkably, the changes had begun to influence governance and social organization. Traditional hierarchical structures based on predetermined roles and rigid protocols were being supplemented by more adaptive arrangements that could recognize and develop emerging capabilities in community members. The Grand Assembly itself was considering proposals for new forms of democratic participation that incorporated uncertainty cultivation principles. Rather than limiting political engagement to established procedures, communities were experimenting with approaches that could identify and nurture civic potential in previously overlooked individuals. But perhaps the most significant transformation was occurring in humanity's understanding of its own nature and purpose. The Stone Garden effect had revealed that human beings possessed capacities for growth and development that had been largely untapped by previous social arrangements. Kira herself had become a living example of these expanded human possibilities. Her role as a development catalyst had evolved beyond working with individual children to helping entire communities discover and develop their collective potential. She had recently completed her first major project with an adult population, working with the residents of Habitat Pod 12 Gamma, which had been experiencing persistent social and economic difficulties. Traditional intervention approaches had failed to resolve the pod's problems, leading administrators to request assistance from the Development Catalyst program. Kira's approach to the assignment demonstrated the profound wisdom she had developed through her unique experiences. Rather than analyzing the pod's problems or prescribing solutions, she spent weeks simply observing the residents and learning to perceive their hidden potential. Every community has seeds, she explained to the pod's governing council during her initial assessment. But sometimes the soil isn't right for growing, or people have forgotten how to water them properly. Over the following months, Kira worked with individuals and groups throughout Pod 12 Gamma, helping them identify projects and commitments that could nurture their underlying capabilities. She guided some residents toward collaborative artistic endeavors that had uncertain outcomes but required sustained cooperation. Others she encouraged to pursue technical innovations that might fail but would develop their problem-solving abilities regardless of immediate success. Most importantly, she helped the community develop what she called growing culture, shared understanding that potential exists everywhere and that nurturing possibilities is more important than guaranteeing outcomes. The results exceeded everyone's expectations, including Kara's. Within 6 months,
Pod 12 Gamma had transformed from a struggling community with persistent problems into one of the most innovative and cooperative habitats in the system. Residents had developed new forms of conflict resolution, created technologies that improved quality of life, and established social arrangements that effectively identified and supported individual and collective potential. News of Kira's success with Pod 12 Gamma attracted attention from throughout the solar network. Habitat systems that had previously been skeptical of uncertainty cultivation approaches began requesting their own development catalyst programs. The demand for trained development catalysts far exceeded the supply, leading to intensive research into the identification and training of individuals with the necessary aptitudes. It became clear that while Kira possessed exceptional natural abilities, many people could develop significant capacity for perceiving and nurturing potential in others. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself leading training programs for aspiring development catalysts from across human civilization. The programs combine theoretical understanding of human development with practical experience in uncertainty cultivation and guided mentorship with established catalysts. The most important qualification isn't intelligence or education, Elena discovered through her training work. It's the willingness to maintain faith in possibilities that can't be proven in advance. Some of our most effective catalysts are people who were overlooked by traditional evaluation systems. The training programs themselves became laboratories for understanding human potential. Participants who had shown little exceptional ability in conventional domains sometimes demonstrated remarkable capacity for perceiving and nurturing growth in others. One particularly striking example was David Martinez, a maintenance worker from Habitat Pod 3 Delta who had never shown any indication of special abilities. During development catalyst training, he revealed an extraordinary gift for recognizing technical potential in broken or discarded systems. David could examine a malfunctioning piece of equipment and perceive possibilities for repair or repurposing that weren't evident to trained engineers. More importantly, he could guide others through the patient process of exploring those possibilities, helping them develop both technical skills and tolerance for uncertain outcomes. David sees growing in machines the same way Kira sees growing in people, Elena observed during one of her research reports. The underlying capacity seems to be the ability to perceive potential that isn't currently manifested and to maintain faith in gradual development processes. As the Development Catalyst program expanded throughout human civilization, it began to generate changes that extended far beyond individual communities. The accumulated effect of thousands of people learning to perceive and nurture potential was reshaping humanity's collective capacity for innovation and adaptation. New technologies emerged at accelerating rates as more individuals developed comfort with pursuing uncertain possibilities. Artistic achievements flourished as people learned to value the process of creative exploration regardless of immediate results. Social innovations proliferated as communities discovered new ways to organize themselves around the development of human potential. But, perhaps the most profound change was in humanity's understanding of its own future. Previous generations had focused on optimizing existing systems and protecting against known risks. The Stone Garden effect had revealed the importance of maintaining openness to possibilities that couldn't be predicted or controlled. This shift in perspective became crucial when humanity encountered its first major test of the new developmental approaches. Long-range sensors detected anomalous energy signatures approaching the solar system, signs of what appeared to be an alien intelligence with capabilities far exceeding human technology. Traditional strategic thinking would have focused on defense preparations and worst-case scenario planning. Instead, human civilization's response was shaped by uncertainty cultivation principles and development catalyst insights. Rather than assuming hostile intent or preparing for conflict, humanity chose to approach the situation as an unprecedented opportunity for growth and development. The alien contact represented the ultimate uncertainty cultivation experience, nurturing possibilities for communication and cooperation with an intelligence that operated by completely unknown principles. Kira, now recognized as humanity's leading expert on development through uncertainty, was asked to participate in the contact preparation process. Her response demonstrated how profoundly her thinking had evolved from the child who had once watered a stone. "When I look at this situation," she told the assembled representatives of human civilization, "I see the biggest seed we've ever had the chance to water. We don't know what will grow from contact with alien intelligence,
but we know that the willingness to nurture uncertain possibilities is what has made us who we are. The contact protocols developed under her guidance emphasized patience, curiosity, and faith in gradual understanding rather than immediate comprehension. Humanity would approach the aliens not as potential enemies or even as problems to be solved, but as an opportunity to discover new forms of growth and development. When the alien ships finally arrived and communication was established, the first exchanges confirmed the wisdom of this approach. The alien intelligence operated according to principles that no human could have predicted or planned for, but the uncertainty cultivation experiences of recent years had prepared humanity to engage with fundamental unknowns. The aliens themselves were fascinated by humanity's recent developmental changes. Their own civilization had achieved remarkable technological capabilities, but they had never encountered a species that had learned to systematically nurture potential through faith-based cultivation. "Your child's mistake," the alien ambassador communicated through translation systems that required weeks to develop, reveals something about consciousness that we had not previously understood. The willingness to tend possibilities without evidence may be more fundamental to intelligence than knowledge or analysis. The cultural exchange that developed between humanity and the alien civilization became the ultimate expression of uncertainty cultivation principles. Neither species could predict what would emerge from their interaction, but both committed to the patient process of nurturing understanding and cooperation. As the story reached its conclusion, Kira reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple act of faith. The stone she had watered, believing it to be a seed, had indeed produced growth beyond anything she could have imagined. Not the growth of a plant emerging from soil, but the growth of human potential emerging from the willingness to believe in possibilities beyond immediate evidence. The lesson of her experience had become the foundation of a new approach to human development and social organization. People throughout the solar network had learned that the most important cultivation often involves nurturing possibilities that can't be proven valuable in advance. Children now grew up understanding that potential exists everywhere and that patient faith can help it develop in unexpected ways. Adults had discovered that their own growth need not end with youth, that uncertainty cultivation could continue to reveal new capabilities throughout their lives. Most importantly, humanity had learned to approach its future with the same combination of hope and patience that Kira had demonstrated when she tended her stone. They had become a civilization willing to water seeds of possibility without demanding immediate evidence of success. The stone that had never grown remained in Kira's personal garden, not as a symbol of failure or naivety, but as a reminder of the profound truth she had discovered through her innocent mistake. The most significant growth often occurs not in the object of our attention, but in ourselves through the act of faithful nurturing. As she visited her stone garden on the anniversary of that first planting, Kira understood that her childhood error had revealed one of the deepest principles of existence: the willingness to believe in and tend to possibilities beyond current proof is not foolishness, but wisdom. It is the quality that allows individuals to transcend their current limitations and enables civilizations to grow beyond their existing boundaries. The man who destroys his weak self, his need for immediate evidence, his fear of uncertain outcomes, his attachment to guaranteed results, can never be destroyed by others because he has learned to draw strength from sources that transcend external validation. He has learned to water seeds of possibility with the faith that growth will occur, even when that growth takes forms he never expected to see. Kira's stone had never sprouted, but, through her faithful tending of it, she had sprouted into something far greater than a child who could grow plants. She had become someone who could grow people, communities, and, ultimately, an entire civilization's understanding of its own potential. The stone remained in the garden, smooth and unchanged, a testament to the profound truth that the most important cultivation is not of the object we tend, but of the faith, patience, and wisdom we develop through the act of tending itself. In watering her stone, believing it was a seed, Kira had planted the real seed, the understanding that human potential grows not through certainty and control, but through the willing cultivation of hope in the face of uncertainty. That seed had indeed grown, yielding a harvest that transformed not just individual lives, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. The child who had watered a stone, believing it was a seed, had discovered the secret that the man who destroys his weak self, his need for immediate proof, his fear of failure, his attachment to certain outcomes, can never be destroyed by others. For he has learned to draw strength from the deepest source of all, the faith that patient nurturing of possibilities will yield growth,
even when that growth exceeds everything we thought we knew about what was possible.